Sture Ragnar Bergwall, born April 26, 1950, better known as Thomas Quick, is a Swedish man who grew up in Korsnäs with his 6 siblings. He adopted his mother's maiden name, Quick, around 1991. After a history of criminal behavior, molestations of boys and various assaults and drug use, Quick was sentenced in 1991 for armed robbery. He also stabbed a man while in outpatient treatment at a psychiatric facility. Sture had a troubled childhood and was eventually confined to a mental institution for personality disorders following a conviction for a botched bank robbery. He confessed to more than 30 killings, including that of Katrine da Costa. Between 1994 and 2001, Quick was convicted of 8 of these murders. However, while being held in a mental health facility for personality problems at Säter spanning across Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark from 1993 to 2000, he withdrew all of his confessions in 2008. He claimed he didn't want to accept responsibility for the killings and that he was prone to fantasizing due to a history of insanity. As a result, his murder convictions were quashed, the final one in July 2013, and he was released from hospital. The issue progressed to the point where there was intense discussion and dispute regarding his guilt or innocence. Some thought he was under force to confess, and that he was innocent. Some thought he was guilty and had only fabricated his story to escape justice. His confessions, which usually surfaced in therapy, led to the involvement of police authorities. Quick's admissions and a need for restitution led to protracted investigations and court cases. But in a shocking turn of events, questions began to arise about the truthfulness of his assertions. Inconsistencies were identified after closer examination, which raised serious concerns regarding the accuracy of Quick's confessions and the way the legal system handled the case. This information highlighted the difficulties associated with mental health, coercion, and the pursuit of justice within the criminal justice system, casting doubt on the validity of criminal confessions. It was originally believed that Bergwall was a serial killer and sentenced to life in prison. Years later, he said that he had been tricked by the police, and his psychiatrist revoked all of his confessions. One significant problem with the case was that only his confessions, not any tangible proof, connected him to the killings. There was therefore a great deal of ambiguity over the actual events. The psychiatrist who collaborated with him was charged with professional misconduct, further complicating the situation. This Thomas Quick case exposed serious problems with the validity of murder convictions based on thin evidence. Considered the biggest miscarriage of justice in Swedish history, the case highlighted systemic flaws in the legal system and led to a thorough examination of investigative procedures, the processing of forensic evidence, and the vulnerability of mentally ill individuals in the criminal justice system. This momentous event prompted strong calls for reform and increased awareness of the need for stronger safeguards to prevent wrongful convictions and guarantee justice for all. Through TV broadcasts and books, journalists Hannes Rustam, Jenny Kuttum, and Dan Josephson provided light on the murder cases, blaming the false confessions on flawed therapy methods. Their investigations revealed an unsettling story of manipulation. Sture Bergwall was reportedly forced to make false admissions by psychologist Margit Norell and her suspected cult-like group. According to Josephson's accounts, justice was subverted, and the weak were taken advantage of in a dark web of power. These disclosures caused a stir in the public and prompted a wider conversation in Sweden regarding the morality of therapeutic interventions, the power of authority people, and the objectivity of criminal investigations. Police interviews ensued after Quick's confessions during treatment sessions. Amazingly, one admission appeared to close an unsolved murder case that dated back 18 years, and another resulted in the unofficial settlement of a 1964 murder in Växjö, which was past Sweden's 25-year statute of limitations. Because of Quick's revelations, officials were able to conclude that both cases had been resolved. This unexpected turn of events brought to light the possible impact of his confessions on unsolved crimes, sparking discussion over the veracity of his allegations and the efficiency of investigative techniques in bringing long-standing unresolved crimes to a close. No physical evidence or eyewitness accounts connected Thomas Quick to the crimes. Instead, his conviction was based only on his confessions made during recovered memory treatment sessions and later police interrogations. But Quick's confessions revealed serious inconsistencies, with many of the specifics turning out to be completely false. It has come to light that Quick, while under the influence of benzodiazepines, fabricated a lot of his statements by taking cues from his interrogators. Notably, Quick's study at the Royal Library in Stockholm demonstrated his interest in unsolved killings, which further complicated the case. When Norwegian media published his account, it attracted attention to his confession of a murder in Norway. This led Quick to ask Norwegian journalists for prior stories on the subject. The previously unreported elements in these files led Swedish police to surmise that the offender was the only one who could have such knowledge. This discovery exposed the brittleness of Quick's admissions and cast serious questions on the veracity of his convictions, constituting a momentous injustice in Swedish legal history. Therese Johannesson, then 9 years old, disappeared from Fjell near Drammen, Norway, in 1988, leaving her fate unknown. 10 years later, Thomas Quick was found guilty of her alleged murder. The key piece of evidence rested on the finding of burned bones that were thought to be the remains of a child. But a startling discovery was made in 2012 when lab tests showed that the alleged bone fragments were, in fact, a composite made of wood and glue that most likely came from hardboard. In order to prevent erroneous convictions and provide justice for victims and their families, this discovery brought to light structural weaknesses in the criminal justice system and emphasized the necessity of meticulous examination of the evidence. An examination of his answers showed inconsistencies in his attempts to identify characteristics, such as birthmarks, and provide information about murder weapons. Leading questions were asked of him during police interrogations, and the official version that was given to the court later contained errors in his first assumptions. This examination revealed the coercive and manipulative techniques used in the research, raising questions about the reliability of the data that was provided. The disclosure of these dishonest tactics exposed structural weaknesses in the criminal justice system and sparked serious doubts about Quick's admissions' veracity. This information not only raised doubts about the veracity of his convictions, but also spurred a more thorough review of investigative methods and the safeguarding of suspects' rights during police questioning. The introduction of therapists into Thomas Quick's case created a storyline that explained away his original incoherent information by blaming it on therapy's ability to help repress memories. For example, psychologist Christiansen told the court during the Therese murder trial that traumatic memories may stay dormant in memory and that the unconscious defense systems would prevent them from coming to mind. Throughout court rulings, the idea of Quick's repressed recollections kept coming up. With the help of the therapists, a framework was developed that depicted Quick's story as developing and becoming more concentrated as a normal result of therapeutic interaction. In doing so, the prosecution strengthened its case and reduced doubts about Quick's confession's veracity. Nevertheless, a closer examination of the case raised serious questions regarding the reliability of Quick's memories and the impact of suggested therapy methods. Regarding the interpretation of memory retrieval in criminal trials and the possibility of miscarriages of justice, this aspect of the Thomas Quick case highlights larger problems concerning the interface between psychology and the legal system. There was a great deal of media attention in Sweden due to the authenticity of Thomas Quick's confessions. Many who disagreed with Quick's assertions and the fairness of the trials, including a police officer connected to one investigation, cast doubt on both. Their argument was that Quick's confessions did not contain any significant proof, implying that he was a habitual liar. These detractors believed that Quick's confessions lacked credibility unless he could produce concrete evidence, such as the victim's possessions. Both the 30 extra killings he had confessed to and the murders for which he had been found guilty were flatly denied by Quick in a December 2008 television interview with Hannes Rostam. The veracity of his prior admissions came under much more scrutiny after this denial, which also raised serious concerns about how the legal system and law enforcement handled the matter. The controversies surrounding Quick's confessions brought to light the difficulties in conducting thorough criminal investigations, the reliability of eyewitness accounts being subject to error, and the need for open and honest courts. Between 1994 and 2001, Thomas Quick was convicted of 8 murders across Sweden and Norway. However, the convictions were primarily based on his confessions, which were later called into question due to a lack of substantial forensic evidence and inconsistencies. For instance, in cases like the murders of Charles Zelmanovitz and Johan Asplund, there was no physical evidence linking Quick to the crimes apart from his confession. Similarly, in other cases such as the Stegehuis couple and Gristorvik, Quick's knowledge of undisclosed information raised doubts about the validity of his confessions. Moreover, forensic evidence presented in some cases, like the bone fragments in the Therese Johannesson case, was later found to be unreliable. Over time, all of Quick's convictions were overturned upon appeal, with the final one quashed in July 2013, leading to his release after more than 2 decades of confinement in a facility for the criminally insane. These events underscored systemic flaws in the legal process and prompted calls for reforms to prevent wrongful convictions and ensure justice for all. In Sweden, defendants have the right to access the entire police investigation before trial, ensuring transparency and fairness in the legal process. However, Thomas Quick's lawyer, Claes Borgström, faced backlash for reportedly failing to adequately advocate for his client's rights, particularly considering Quick's mental health challenges. Critics argue that Borgström should have taken greater measures to protect Quick's objective interest in being judged not guilty, which is fundamental to the principles of justice and due process. The criticism highlights the importance of competent legal representation, especially for individuals who may be vulnerable or marginalized within the criminal justice system. However, his newfound freedom came with stringent conditions, including abstention from alcohol and narcotics. The reversal of Quick's convictions marked a significant moment in Sweden's legal history, highlighting the fragility of justice when reliant on coerced or unreliable confessions. This watershed case prompted soul-searching within the legal community and sparked calls for reforms to safeguard against wrongful convictions and ensure a fair and equitable judicial process for all individuals, regardless of their circumstances. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this case. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or email at crimesabroad@outlook.com. Your engagement helps us continue to provide content like this.